Chapter 1. Some people died suddenly. Others took their time. It was a gloomy, wet afternoon, typical of August in Chicago. Larry hated funerals. He estimated 200 open umbrellas along the string of black limousines being loaded at the curb of Holy Name Cathedral. Larry felt the dampness rising off the pavement under his gray trench coat. It would take an hour for the funeral procession to reach Calgary Catholic Cemetery in Evanston. Dozens of police cars blocked intersections and efficiently led the long procession to George Chumley's final resting place. Larry's benefactor was a beloved man, dead at the age of 80, doing what he loved best, staring at stamps. If it weren't for George Chumley, there would be no Chicago Numismatic and Coin Museum on Michigan Avenue, across the street from the Art Institute. George and his scrappy wife Rosemary had always treated Larry like a cherished nephew. They had paid for his university education. They single-handedly raised the necessary funds to open the museum, giving Larry a mission, a career, and a fantastic salary. The Chumleys loved Larry with their money, and he never really understood why. Reaching their golden years, George and Rosemary sold off their beloved Chumley confectioners to the highest bidder for a tidy $1 billion. Not bad for a pair of Irish immigrants who came to Chicago in the early 1960s, their only belongings in canvas bags. Before men landed on the moon, the couple sat in their modest Chicago apartment and dreamed of the future. George learned how to make chewing gum, Chumley's Chews, spearmint, peppermint, cinnamon, and bubble gum wrapped in silver foil. They were as recognizable as McDonald's and Coca-Cola worldwide. Rosemary worked with chocolatiers and invented Patty's Push-Ups, Leprechaun Gold Bars, and Black Flag Fudge. The candies and gums took America's sweet-toothed youth by storm. But this was a funeral. No one was eating candy or smacking gum today. The revered Archbishop of Chicago read a final piece of scripture over George's casket. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter, under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. After the casket was carried into the copper-wrapped mausoleum, the ceremony ended. To some in the crowd, George's final resting place reminded them of a giant candy bar wrapped in gold paper. That was the way George wanted it. Larry stayed back as Rosemary Chumley received condolences from well-wishers and friends. Everyone was invited back to the Chumley mansion to share their stories over the years about lovable Georgie. But no button accordion music, Rosemary promised. George loved playing his accordion, loved singing dirty limericks passed down from his childhood in Dublin. There was a young gal named Sally who loved an occasional dally. She sat on the lap of a well-endowed chap crying, "Gee, Dick, you're right up my alley." As the crowd thinned, Larry approached the missus with an umbrella. Rosemary Chumley took his arm in hers. "Ah, such a day, Lawrence," she sighed. Larry guided her to her waiting car. Her chauffeur stood by the open door as Larry helped her in the back seat. The woman had a mind as sharp as a penny nail, but her body was frail. Larry tucked a quilt across her lap. "Now, Lawrence, you must come back to the house for the shenanigans. This is an Irish thing. The dead aren't gone until we say so." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world, Rosemary." Her eyes fell on George's final resting place. "Oh, that damned Georgie and his stamps. I've always been jealous of them." She shook her head and stared at Larry. "I have something to show you. It's rather disturbing. Pornographic, but in a tasteful sort of way. I don't know what to make of it. Mrs. Chumley." She patted him on the cheek. "Come now, Lawrence, we must be adults about such things. I'll see you at the house." Her driver climbed behind the wheel and steered her away. Larry closed his umbrella and handed it to an attendant. He climbed in the front passenger seat of a waiting limousine. "Back to the south side, sir?" said his driver, Homer. "No, Homer," Larry said glumly. "Follow the northbound parade." To the Chumley mansion, then?" "Yes, whether I like it or not." "How come you always sit in front, Mr. Settlebottom?" I'm a working stiff, just like you, Homer.